Good morning, everybody, and happy Tuesday. So we've been talking about standards, raising your standards, and that really if you want to live the quality of life that I think you're expecting to, if you're watching this video or if you're up at 4:30 in the morning, the real thing that you can do is you can raise your standards. Well, so I decided to watch The Last Dance, the story of the Bulls on their final season, because there's no better example of raising your standards than Michael Jordan. So, just a recap, Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. And one of the best things that ever happened to him, he said to his coach, I'm the best player on the team. And the coach said, yeah, you have the most raw and natural ability of anybody on the team, but you're not disciplined and you haven't learned the fundamentals of the game, and you're not interested in playing my offense. And if you're not interested in playing my offense, then you're not going to be on my team. Now, Michael had a very demanding father, and his home life was very competitive when he was growing up, especially with an older brother. So he said to his coach, well, what do I need to do in order to make the team? And he said, you come here every day and practice, and I'll train you. You develop the skills that you don't have, and you put it together with that talent, and then you'll make my team. Well, of course, he ended up being one of the top players in the country and one of the top recruits when he went into North Carolina. Scottie Pippen came from Arkansas and played at a small high school in Arkansas and wasn't recruited into college because he was 5'10" at this time. He went to Central Arkansas, not even an NCAA school. It's an NAIA school. And he had to basically beg to try to get onto the basketball team. He was a custodian, and he kept asking the coach and kept asking the coach and kept asking the coach, how do I get on this team? And the coach finally relented, basically. And then from his freshman year to his junior year, he grew from 6'1" to 6'7", 6'8", whatever Scottie Pippen was. And then, of course, became a very dominant player, but he was still an NAIA. I mean, it was amazing that he got drafted number 5 in the draft. And by the way, let's remember, Michael Jordan did not get drafted number 1 in the draft. He got drafted number 3. Michael comes into the NBA, and he gets drafted by the Chicago Bulls. At that time, the indoor soccer team, the Sting, was outdrawing the Chicago Bulls. That's how bad the Chicago Bulls were. And Michael Jordan came into the league and said, I'm going to be the best player ever, and we're going to win championships. Now, Michael was 6'6", and he was skinny. He wasn't a very big guy back then. And all of the experts said, number one player can't do it in the NBA. And number 2, if you're going to build a team around one player to win championships, that player is going to need to be 7 feet tall. I mean, the Celtics had 3 players who were 7 feet tall at the time, I think. I think Parrish was. I think McHale was. Obviously Larry Bird wasn't. They had another player that was close to 7 feet tall. And they could all run and they could all dribble. And everybody said, look, Michael Jordan's got a great deal of talent, but he's only 6'6". He's a tiny little guy. A guy that is 6'6" cannot dominate the league. Well, both of those guys, Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, patterned themselves after Dr. J. And for those of you that are young, Dr. J was the greatest player of his time. And he did things on a basketball court that nobody believed was possible. And he played for the ABA, the American Basketball Association. And everybody thought that the ABA had no chance against the NBA. But when they had a championship game, the ABA won, and they won because of Dr. J. And Dr. J was asked one time, what is it that makes you so special? Is it just because you got all this natural talent? Is it just because, you happen to be in the right place at the right time? And his response to that question, he actually got kind of huffy. And he said, the reason that I've had the success that I've had is because I don't compete against other people. I compete against myself. And I hold myself to a higher standard. I expect more from myself than anybody else could possibly expect from me. And if you listen to interviews of Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, you will hear them say that phrase. I expected more of myself than anybody else possibly could. And there's story after story after story of Michael Jordan practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing. And, one of the players said, when you went and played with Michael, he put you through a fire and forged you into the player that you were. Because Michael was incredibly demanding, but he demanded more of himself than he did of anybody else. So nobody said a word because they knew that he was going to be the guy that was going to be working the hardest. So at the end of the day, no matter what he expected of them, he was going to demand more of himself. And, 6 championships and the greatest player ever, and Scottie Pippen is listed in the top 50 players of all time. When you think about the law of attraction, the way I think that should be looked at is you don't pursue success, you attract it. And what that means is success is an internal thing. It's not as much of an external thing. It's an internal game. There's an external component to it for sure. Absolutely. There's matrix and there's strategies. But the real battle is internal. You attract success by demanding the most of yourself. When you come to whatever that competition is in life, and whether it's being the greatest father or the greatest spouse or the greatest police officer or the greatest lawyer or the greatest doctor, the greatest nurse, the greatest teacher, whatever it is, that is an internal battle for you to have the highest standards of anybody else. And you do that by competing against yourself. You don't have competition outside. Your competition is with yourself. And when you bring to the table better education, better energy, better effort, better strategies, when you develop all of those skills, then success will come and find you. Michael needed other players, and he needed other things to happen in order for the success to happen. But here was the thing. Once he became, which happened quickly, within a few games, it was obvious that he was the best player in the league. Once that happened, people wanted to come play for him. The management wanted to put together the team that he needed in order to win the championships. The crowds immediately showed up. And remember, it didn't happen right away for Michael. Detroit kept beating him and kept beating him and kept beating him. And if you watch the interviews, he'll tell you that he was yelling at everybody else, and he finally figured out that what needed to happen is he needed to change in order for them to beat Detroit. He needed to get bigger. He needed to get stronger because they were beating him up. It wasn't everybody else's fault. It was his fault. Whatever it is that you're going to go be the best at, you do it by raising your standards, by living life at the highest standards possible. And when you do that again and again and again, and don't look externally, look internally, and make sure that you're demanding the most of yourself, then the rest will fall into place. And you do absolutely have to go do the rest, just like Michael did. But he did it with himself first, and then the rest showed up. The same thing just happened up in Milwaukee. Giannis shows up in Milwaukee and wants to be the best and win championships, and he's gonna. And he started becoming the best, and at first nobody, he was this skinny little kid. Nobody thought that was going to happen. Well, then all of a sudden he puts on all this muscle. Then all of a sudden he starts showing an incredible work ethic. The other thing about Michael is he never took a minute off. He never took a day off. He never took a game off. He never took a minute off. And we forget about the tenacious defense that the Bulls played. They weren't just an offensive team. They were the greatest defensive team in the league. You got one shot, maybe if you were lucky, and it was usually a bad shot, and you never got an offensive rebound. And Michael Jordan played as tough, if not tougher, defense as he did offense. Giannis does that, and now a franchise that, nobody was even paying any attention to, everybody wants to come play at. Why? Because they want to come play with him. They want to come play with the best in the league and the most enthusiastic and the one that's the most aggressive in a good way. So whatever it is that you're going to do today, make sure you set your standards and focus on that. The law of attraction is you don't pursue success, you attract success. And you attract success by being the best at whatever it is you're doing. Have a great Tuesday, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.